Well, welcome again to one of our interviews, our alumni interviews, and we're really glad to be back with you. Uh, Today we have, well, I'll be full disclosure, my sister, Glenda Watts Thomas, and we're so happy to have her. Welcome, Glenda.
Thank you.
All right. Uh, we have it on the screen, but maybe you can tell us what class you graduated with.
I have to tell that, huh?
Yeah, right.
61. That
Well,
was a
see,
good year.
that was a good year, you bet.
Yeah.
And now the question we have to ask is, how many years did you attend Enterprise?
I attended all 4 years.
You're one of those
And I have a
4 year.
little, yeah, I have a little story about that.
Okay.
When the about a month before school was to start, Elder Wines came out to our house to ask if I would academy, and my parents said no, that we didn't have the money. They were not going to be able to send me. So, and I was pretty happy about that because in our little town of 1100, I liked my classmates and I knew who they were. I didn't know a soul at Enterprise. So I was jumping up and down inside, but I never said anything. Well, about 2 weeks before school was to start, to back up a little bit, my mother had worked for a lady about 6, 7 years before that. And when she got done with the job, the lady said, "I'll never pay you for this. You did a terrible job." Well, my mother was crushed because she knew she always tried to do a good job. Well, 2 weeks before school started, guess what? That lady got to feeling guilty and she sent the money to my parents. The entrance fee in the first month of school was $200. That check was for $200. So you know where I went. I wasn't kicking and screaming, but I did go scared to death because I knew no one. And they put me in a room with Barbara Watts because we had the same last name and they thought probably we were cousins. So that's how I got my start at Enterprise.
All right. I didn't know that. That's something I didn't know. You're telling me a story that I never knew. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's well. Where did you? Everybody worked on campus. That was
Mhm.
part of the study program, and so you probably worked more than one place. But where did you work when you were at Enterprise?
The first year I worked in the cafeteria with Mrs. Erdman. And a lot of that time I did the serving and helped set up stuff so we could get ready to go. The second year I worked in the laundry with Mrs. Thompson and we had a blast there. And then the third and fourth year I worked for Elder Peckham in the accounting office and I loved that. That was the right place for me to be.
Yeah,
And
he's a nice person too.
and I could work 5 or 6 hours on Sunday and 3 or 4 hours the rest of the time. And when I graduated from academy, my school bill was paid off. My
That,
parents didn't have to pay anymore.
that's great.
So, yeah.
Well, you work in the cafeteria, and of course, Mrs. Erdman was the cook, and there's a lot of stories about how good a cook she was. Did you have a meal that was favorite of you or yours in the cafeteria?
Well, I had a couple of them.
Okay.
She was a good cook. I don't think there was much complaining while she was there, and she was there the whole time I was there. Um, on Friday night, she cooked something that was hugely fattening, I'm sure. It was a cream soup and it had all kinds of dried fruit in it: apricots, prunes, raisins, apples, peaches, anything that you could dry was in that soup. And it was so good. Then you also picked up your cinnamon roll to have for Sabbath morning. That was very hard to keep it until Sabbath morning. We usually did because we knew we'd be hungry otherwise, but those two things really stood out as being good. I wasn't German, so I wasn't real keen on her cabbage rolls, but I'm sure a lot of the kids were because a lot of kids were German or part German or what, and I'm sure they liked that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that was home cooking to them. That's for sure.
Right.
Well, as you think about your classes, did you have a favorite class or one that you really enjoyed?
Yeah. I liked typing first with Miss Edgerton, and then I liked accounting with Elder Peckham. That was my favorite class. And that class took me, I never had another accounting class. And for 36 years, I was a church treasurer. And that was all the accounting I had.
Cool.
And the last part, the last 8 years, I was treasurer of a church that has 900 members. And they were a little more detailed than the other little churches are.
Yeah,
So
right.
it was well for me.
It stretched you a little bit, but it was
Right, it did.
good. Well, I always said that if I would have known how much I used typing later in life, I would have paid a lot more attention in Miss Edgerton's class
Yeah.
because we kind of goofed around, to be honest. And but anyway, uh, okay, then a favorite teacher is one of those, or some other one, a favorite or favorite staff member.
Yeah. Mr. Peckham was actually my favorite teacher. Mrs. Thompson, Ella Mae Thompson, was my favorite person. She was really sweet and caring. And when you were homesick for home, she was. I never loved sick, but I don't know whether she could kind of feel it or what. But she was always there to put an arm around you and say, "It's going to be all right. You're
You're
going
gonna
to
make
like it here."
you're gonna make it through. Well, I'm
Right,
sure you had plenty of work to do because it is something for kids to go away from home and
right.
and get used to it. By the time you get to be seniors, you're you know pretty much
You're loving it.
yeah, you're loving it. Yeah,
Yeah.
why go home? Uh, I know you went on tours because I know you sang and did you play the trombone
I didn't
in the
during
band?
that time. I
Okay.
usually went on choir tours, and the band was going a lot of the time at the same time. So, and we would go to Kansas City, Kansas. There was a lady, they looked old, but they were probably in their mid 50s. She would house a whole bunch of us girls. And could she ever cook? It was so good. But my most fun as going was coming home because mom and dad would take about half of the tour group and we would house them down and we had more fun. No, you were there. As a kid, did you remember us tumbling in the dining room
Oh
and living
yes,
room?
oh yes, I
Yeah,
remember that, and
yeah,
that was always a big deal. Of course, we had a pretty good sized house, so we could house all of them and take care of them.
right.
So, any other experiences on tour did you have, or do you remember anything specific? Or
Well, when we went to the Bazine area, the La Crosse area, those people know how to cook.
yeah,
And we always looked forward to that. And it was just fun. It was just fun to go to all the different churches. I don't know as I had a particular thing that I liked the most. I will tell you that when we went to Junction City, I was 15 years old and I sang my first solo. It was Under His Wings was the was the name of the
okay,
song. You know, it's
cool.
been a
Been a
hundred
while
years.
that you remember that. That
I
was that
still
was
remember it.
memorable. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
What was your best experience at Enterprise?
Probably meeting June. June and she didn't come until the second semester of her sophomore year, if I remember correctly. And we just hit it off. I was rooming with Carol Bales, Carol Fox actually, Bales, and she's Spear now, so I need to
Yeah,
get that all correct.
get that all right.
But the next year I roomed with June, and I roomed with her our junior and our senior year, and then our freshman year at college. And then she up and got married.
Yeah.
She left
Chose
the
a different
college
roommate.
scene. Yeah.
I don't know.
So
These people.
probably, and there were several of us girls that were pretty close. Ruthie Jones and Barbara Watts and Martha Spieler, Arlene Stores, all of those girls, and I'm probably missing some of them. But we all did got along pretty good
You know,
as junior senior girls.
and that's good. It can also be the other way, but usually, the you become family, and uh, you become very close as friends and family, and because that becomes your family. That's people you're living with. A large part of your year. Uh,
I just, before you ask another question, I just thought of something really funny, that story that needs to be told.
okay.
I worked for Elder Peckham, and he was a very precise man. So on one Sunday morning, he put his garden in beside his house. So he had this garden, and everything was all the stakes were there telling what kind it was and blah, blah, blah. Well, Mr. Bromey was there too. He was our music teacher. And Mr. Bromey a lot of times flew by the seat of his pants. And one night he thought, he got home late and he thought, I've got to get my garden in. So he turned on the lights to his car and he put his garden in. Oh, about 2 weeks later, Mr. Peckham came in and he was just kind of fuming. And we tried to figure out what was wrong. Bonnie Bales and I worked for him, trying to figure out what was wrong. Finally, he said, "You know what happened? I did my garden and I went one way. Mr. Bromey came in and did his garden and he planted his garden the other way. So it's all coming up and nothing makes sense."
For an accountant, that drives him nuts.
Right, it drove him nuts.
Oh,
Oh.
that sounds about right. Oh, what about religious activities? Was there any religious activity that really spoke to your heart?
Well, I like the week of prayer speakers were always good, and right now I can't remember a name of
Yeah.
any of them. But the one thing that I really liked personally was that one semester I was the MV leader, and with the help of several of the kids, we made up a little play about the Judgment Day, and I loved that. I thought that was so much fun. So that probably was a highlight to me, and that was my senior year.
Okay.
So,
Was there anything that you'd like to share with about your experience at Enterprise that we haven't been able to share yet?
I will tell you one funny little thing. We girls, we had to walk different ways than the boys did on Sabbath afternoon. Well, this particular time, we could walk towards the bridge. I had no clue that Ruthie Jones was scared to death of the bridge. And I kept telling her, "No, come on, it's not gonna fall in, nothing's gonna happen. Come on, you can do it." She hung on to me like a life-saving rope. And finally, in the middle, I turned around and we went back the other way. I couldn't handle her hanging on to me so tight. But that's one of the things that kind of stands out. Oh,
There's just a lot of good things that happen at Academy.
yeah.
I'm sure that as people think about it, there are bad experiences, but I think for most of us, the good far outweighs the bad, and
Oh,
uh,
right. Yeah.
and we have the tendency to remember. The human mind has a tendency to remember the good. At least that seems like it. So anyway, well, it's been good. I should mention that Glenda served as the alumni president, and we up to the year that we had to not have it because of COVID, and so then I've got the first year of not having it because of the COVID, and so it's kind of frustrating. Being alumni
Right.
president, not having alumni to be able
No,
to
right.
do it. But anyway, we're going to make the best of it, and we really looking forward to the virtual um, alumni weekend. We'll have something on Friday night and something on Sabbath morning. So anyway, it'll be a good time, I'm sure, and that's what we're practicing for by doing these interviews is kind of getting ready, warming up. This is kind of warming
Right.
up for it. So thank you so much for being willing to be interviewed. I know the people will enjoy it, and you take care, and we'll talk to you later.